The elevator opened to the 49th floor like a vault, revealing light. Mara Vale stepped out with a badge that said Risk Analyst and a face designed to be forgotten. Vale Dynamics thrummed with quiet powerglass, steel, and the hum of money changing direction. Her real employer had embedded her here to investigate whispered crimes dressed up as corporate strategy. She studied the patterns, the people, the CEO. Adrian Vale was the kind of man who filled a room without speaking. He rarely smiled. His calendar ran his life. At a quarterly reception, Mara watched servers orbit investors, watched assistants triage proximity like bodyguards of time, and then she saw him, a boy in a navy blazer, 12, small, still standing beside a column like a misplaced shadow. People skimmed around him as if he were furniture. A tray snagged a chair. Crystal tilted. Red wine arced toward the boy. Mara moved before thinking, palming the tray, steadying the step. The boy didn't flinch. He didn't speak. Mara's hands began to move. "Are you okay?" she signed. His eyes snapped to hers, lightning in a storm bottle. Slowly, beautifully, he signed back, "I'm fine. Do you sign?" And the room, noisy a breath before, fell quiet inside her chest. Chapter 2: The Edge of the Crowd. His name was Leo Vale, and he preferred rooftops to rooms. He tapped the rail once, nervous habit, then signed fast, like thought outrunning fear. "No one here talks like this. Just my tutor. And she leaves at 5. Mara kept her movements measured, clear. Hands, open chest, soft eyes, the way she'd learned for field work and for home. Her younger sister had signed before she'd spoken. Muscle memory had a way of resurrecting the past. "I talked like this," she signed. "I like how clear it is." A muscle in Leo's jaw softened. Inside, the party swelled. Outside, city lights stitched the river with silver. Mara glanced through the glass. Adrian Vale stood in a cluster of board members, gaze flicking across the floor, never once landing on his son. "Ms. Vale," Security Chief Rowan murmured at her shoulder, appearing out of nowhere. He wore a suit like a threat. "Analysts don't mingle with family." "Understood," Mara replied, neutral. Her hands stayed still. When Rowan left, Leo's fingers lifted again, small birds escaping. "It's okay. I'm used to being invisible." Mara felt the words like gravel underfoot. "You're not invisible now." He smiled, then brief, blazing. The kind of smile that makes a promise without saying what it costs. Chapter 3: The tutor leaves at 5. She found excuses to pass by the 28th floor learning space right before 5. The glass-walled room held a long table, too many chairs, and a single boy with a sketchbook. At 5:02, the tutor packed up. At 5:05, Leo was alone. Mara set a folder on the table. "Facilities audit," she told the passing assistant. To Leo, she signed. "What are you drawing?" "Wind," he signed, grinning. "Hard to draw, easy to feel." He showed her scribbles of arrows and swirls, then a page of hands forming friend. "Brave, listen." She swallowed. "Can I practice with you?" She signed. "Yes, but you're good already, Rusty." She signed back. "My sister." She stopped. "Field rule, don't offer your real life to a legend of a cover." But Leo waited, eyes patient. "My sister used to sign." It felt like home. Outside the room, cameras blinked like sleepy eyes. Inside, they built a grammar that didn't need sound. When he laughed, it was with his whole face. When he was afraid, his hand stuttered then steadied. When she left, he tapped the table twice. "Come back." By the third day, she didn't call it an excuse anymore. Chapter 4: The Man in the Corner Office. Adrian Vale didn't call. He summoned. The office was a cathedral of angles and reflected sky. He didn't sit behind the desk. He stood by the window, city at his back like an obedient ocean. "You've been useful," he said without greeting. "Your models predicted the supply squeeze in Q2. I like accuracy. Thank you. You were at the reception with my son." Mara kept her breath slow. "There was an incident with glassware. I intervened." He studied her like a problem begging a solution. "Leo is particular." She thought of the boy signing Wind. "He's precise. That's an asset." Vale's eyes cooled a fraction. People confuse precision with fragility. He turned away. "Security Chief Rowan thinks you're curious. Stay curious about numbers, Ms. Vale." The meeting ended then, not with a dismissal but with a vacuum that pushed her to the door. "At the threshold," she said, as if to the room, "precision and fragility aren't opposites. Sometimes they work together." He didn't answer. but the glass caught a flicker in his reflections, something that might have been irritation or interest. Chapter 5. The Shape of a Threat. Rowan began to shadow her logs. Subtle at first, then obvious. A wrong badge tone at a turnstile. A random bag check that wasn't random. In the parking garage, a car idled too long in a place where cars don't wait. Mara's real handler voice with no name came through her bone conduction earpiece as she walked the river. Extraction if you're burned. I'm not burned yet. Your primary remains the CEO. The voice reminded. The shell companies, the ghost contracts prove the scheme. Then we go. And the kid. A pause. Not mission critical. She ended the call. The next afternoon, Leo wasn't in the learning space. His sketchbook was open to a page where he'd drawn a corridor camera and a tiny stick figure beneath it with hello hands. Underneath, in clumsy print, Rowan watched. Mara's hands signed to empty air. I know. She put the sketchbook down like it was an oath. Then she opened a secured draft in the RISC system and buried a line of code inside a harmless report, a breadcrumb, to a server the company pretended didn't exist. When you can't fight a shadow, you make it stand in light. Chapter 6. The lesson she didn't mean to teach Adrian Vale a language. She meant to teach him a sign. It happened in the elevator 3rd to 49th. Doors opened at 27. Adrian stepped in. Leo was already there, hands on the rail, shoulders tight, the way small shoulders get when big rooms look down. The elevator lurched, lights flickered, a stall. Somewhere, a server rebooted and the tower hiccuped. Mara's training said breathe, assess, stay calm. Leo's hands trembled. Mara caught his eye and signed, slow and deliberate. You okay? We're safe. Breathe with me. She exaggerated inhale, exhale, the shape of safe. On the first breath, Leo nodded. On the second, he mimicked. On the third, he smiled, tiny, fierce. Adrian Vale watched their hands like a man reading a coastline he'd sailed past 1,000 times without docking. He lifted his own hesitant, heavy-end stride. Safe. He got it wrong. She adjusted, gentle, respectful, reframing the finger shape, the movement. His eyes flicked to hers, then to Leo's. The boy's face lit like windows at dusk. By the time the elevator rose again, Adrian knew one sign. When the doors opened, he didn't stride out. He waited 2 seconds for his son to move beside him. 2 seconds can be a revolution. Chapter 7. Hostile meeting. Shareholder day arrived, like weather, inevitable, noisy, fickle. Cameras, pressed badges, controlled chaos. On stage, Adrian practiced the keynote in a theater of empty seats. Rowan patrolled the aisles like a wolf counting sheep. Backstage, Mara found Leo by a lighting rig, watching workers tape down cables with the absorbed attention of an engineer. He signed, I don't go on stage. He says it's easier if I don't. Easier for who? Mara signed back. He didn't answer. On her screen, the breadcrumb she'd planted bloomed. It led to an off-ledger pipeline that turned fines into consulting. Names lit up. Accounts hummed. She could dump it to regulators and be gone before the coffee cooled. Rowan appeared in her peripheral like a bad idea. Miss Vale, walk with me. In a side corridor, he didn't waste time. Whatever you're digging, stop. The company takes care of its own. Outsiders get lost. Mara said nothing. He leaned closer, voice low. Stay away from the boy. She smiled, like she'd heard a joke. Is that an order or a confession? His eyes hardened. It's a forecast. When he left, she let herself feel it, a thread of fear, and then she cut it. Forecasts can be wrong. Chapter 8. The balcony test crisis chooses its moment. 10 minutes before curtain, a fire alarm in the sub-basement triggered a cascade that killed half the internal network. The backup AV system stuttered. Teleprompter dead. Stage manager pale. Adrian Vale stood behind the curtain, hands at his sides, jaw iron. The show must go on. But the words were trapped in a dark screen. Mara stepped forward before her cover could think better of it. You don't need the prompter, she said. You need an opening. What would you suggest, Ms. Vale? A miracle. She looked at Leo, small beside a rigging case, looking the way people look when they've taught themselves to take up less space than their name. She said softly, a choice. On stage, lights rose. Adrian walked to the podium with the confidence of a man who can buy options on bad weather. He faced shareholders, reporters, staff. Then he stepped away from the podium. My son is here today, he said, voice even. He doesn't speak the way most of you do. He speaks with his hands. I am learning to listen. A murmur rolled the room. Backstage, Leo went still. Mara touched his shoulder, signing. He asked for you, if you want. Fear broke across his face and then something steadier. He nodded. They walked out together. CEO, boy, analyst-shaped ghost. Cameras clicked. Adrian lifted his hands awkward, on a stand, signed the word he'd learned, safe. Leo's laugh was sunlight. The room shifted, imperceptible and total. He began to sign not a speech, a story, about elevators and wind drawings and quiet not being the same as empty. Mara voiced for him clear, faithful the conduit and not the author. In the fourth row, a little girl signed, hello back. Another person tried, thank you, clumsy and brave. A ripple of hands moved through the audience, language learning itself in real time. Mara saw it then, a company turning its face, however slowly, toward its child. Chapter 9, The Man Who Keeps Secrets. Rowan wasn't clapping, he was leaving. Mara followed the way, a shadow follows light. Down service stairs, past the locked door propped open by a wedge only an insider would know to place. In the sub-basement, server's word, the alarm's faint echo still nagging the air. Rowan keyed into a room labeled power that had very little to do with electricity. She slipped in as the door swung shut. Screens bloomed with transfers. A mirrored drive waited for the last handoff, the final export that would erase a decade of white-collar violence. Rowan looked almost tired as he clicked confirm. Mara stepped out. Gun nowhere, badge enough. Forecast was wrong. He didn't startle. He did what men like him do, reached for leverage. You'll burn with this building if you press send. I brought water, she said, and slid a hardware key into the rack. Her breadcrumb bloomed into a full data flood, the off-ledger pipeline, rerouted to a dozen regulators and 3 papers too principled to sell silence. Rohan lunged. She moved. Training turned fear into geometry. He hit the cabinet. She hit the alarm. Doors locked. Seals engaged. Upstairs, the audience was on its feet for a boy speaking with wind. Down here, a man who kept secrets found his hands finally empty. Rowan exhaled, almost admiring. You were never an analyst. Mara met his gaze. You were never a guardian. The lights flickered as the send completed. Somewhere far above, the world changed shape. Chapter 10, The Policy of Listening. The board didn't fall that day. It took 3 arrests, wear suits before they wear handcuffs. Headlines learned, new verbs for old sins. Veiled dynamics didn't die. It molted. A company is a story people agree to tell together. This one got a different ending. Adrian Vale found Mara on the roof where this had started. I don't like debts, he said. I don't collect them. He looked out over the city, its arteries lit like code. I failed him, he said, not to her. I mistook silence for absence. Mara signed, letting words pass through her hands like light through glass. You can change that. He nodded. Tomorrow, I'm issuing a directive. Sign language across the company's security, reception, boardroom, factory floor. Not a perk, a policy. She almost smiled. That's not enough. No, he agreed. It's a start. Leo burst through the stairwell, cheeks pink with wind. He signed to his father's low, patient, generous. Adrian answered, halting then, steadier, safe, proud, learn, the shape of a man reconfiguring himself around his son. Mara turned to go. Stay, Leo signed, small and hopeful. She shook her head, with sorrow and gratitude intertwined. You're safe, she signed. You won't be invisible again. He stepped forward and hugged her with the sureness of someone who's learned that being seen isn't a trick, it's a right. She closed her eyes and let the moment fix itself in memory. Epilogue news feeds called it the policy of listening. Classes sprang up in break rooms. Investors learned thank you with their left hands. Receptionists learned welcome with their right. The glass building spoke with its fingers. And on a rooftop at dusk, a boy drew the wind again, this time with 2 sets of hands beside his. Morning sunlight spilled through the skyscraper's glass atrium, slicing the air into clean, bright geometry. Mara Vale blended into it, easily, dark suit, tablet in hand, the picture of quiet efficiency. On paper, she was a consultant analyzing Vale dynamics, cybersecurity protocols. In truth, she was watching the empire from within, an empire built on silence, money, and fear. Silence, that was how she noticed him again. Leo Vale, the CEO's son, sat alone at the edge of the atrium fountain, a book open across his knees. Around him, employees hurried past. Faces bent toward phones, voices hushed. No one spoke to him. No one even slowed down. The boy's world existed in stillness, a quiet island surrounded by noise. Mara stopped near a column, pretending to check her messages while observing him. His fingers traced shapes in the condensation on the fountain's marble rim lines. Swirls, small symbols that only he understood. The morning crowd blurred behind the glass. Their reflections moved like ghosts around him. When a passing executive brushed too close and sent the book tumbling, Leo didn't react. He simply bent down to pick it up. Movements precise and controlled, the calm of someone who'd learned long ago not to expect kindness. Mara crossed the space before she could think twice. She knelt, holding out the fallen book. "Here," she said softly. Leo looked up. His eyes were gray like storm clouds seen through glass, alert, cautious, and endlessly old. Mara hesitated, then lifted her hands, her movements small and careful. "Are you okay?" The boy blinked, startled. Then, slowly, he signed back. "You know sign language." "A little. My sister taught me." The smallest hint of a smile touched his lips. "Nobody here knows. They just talk over me. That's their loss." Mara signed. A pause, and then Leo's hands moved again, hesitant, hopeful. "Do you work for my father?" Mara nodded once. "Do you?" He signed back, and there was something sharp in his gaze now, not fear, but the curiosity of a child too intelligent for the games adults played around him. Before she could answer, a deep voice echoed across the hall. "Leo." Adrian Vale stood at the far end of the atrium, flanked by his assistants, every inch of him composed and deliberate. The boy stiffened instantly, his hands dropping to his sides. Mara straightened, expression neutral. The CEO's gaze flicked from his son to her, a single assessing glance, cool and unreadable. "You're Mara Vale, from compliance." "Yes, sir." "Good. I'll expect your report on the Zurich accounts by end of day." His tone left no room for conversation. He turned away before she could respond. Leo's shoulders fell. He didn't look up as his father walked past. Mara wanted to say something, anything, but the moment closed like a door. When the crowd swallowed Adrian Vale and his entourage, she crouched again beside the boy. Her fingers signed, small and sure. "You okay?" Leo hesitated. Then, "You used my father's name without signing, sir." Mara smiled faintly. "He already knows who he is." For the first time, Leo laughed silently, freely. It was the sound of joy, without sound at all. And as she stood and walked away, Mara knew she'd crossed an invisible line, one no undercover assignment could ever erase. The next day, the sky over the city looked like polished steel, hard, reflective, and cold. From her office cubicle on the 37th floor, Mara Vale watched the light crawl up the mirrored towers across the street. Her monitor glowed with meaningless spreadsheets, cover work that kept her invisible. But her mind wasn't on the data. It was on the boy who had laughed without sound. Every assignment she'd ever taken had come with distance, a wall between duty and emotion. She was trained to observe, not to care. But Leo Vale was a fracture in her armor. His silence wasn't weakness, it was resistance. He existed in a world where no one listened, and somehow, he'd made peace with it. Until now. That afternoon, Mara found herself in the 28th floor education lounge. The walls were glass, the furniture minimal, a cold attempt at warmth. Leo sat at the far end, sketching with a charcoal pencil. His drawings were quiet chaos, swirling lines, shapes that looked like storms trapped in paper. She tapped lightly on the glass door. He looked up, startled, then smiled when he recognized her. "You came back," he signed. "I had a break. Thought you could teach me something." His eyes brightened. "Like what?" "Your favorite sign." He thought for a moment, then moved his hands in a gesture that flowed like water. "Listen." Mara mimicked it, palms open, turning slightly toward him. "Good," he signed. "Most people think listening is about ears. It's not. It's about attention." Mara laughed softly. "You sound like someone twice your age." He shrugged. "A tiny movement. That's what happens when no one talks to you. You grow up in your head." She felt that like a knife made of truth. When the door slid open behind them, both turned. A man entered, tall, crisp, military posture. Chief of Security, Rohan. His voice was smooth and precise, but it carried warning like static under silk. "Ms. Vale, you're not cleared for this floor." "I was delivering audit revisions to the tutoring staff." she said evenly, slipping her badge from her pocket. Rowan's gaze flicked to Leo, then back. Mr. Vale doesn't like unnecessary distractions. He's not distracted, Mara replied before she could stop herself. He's communicating. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. Rowan's mouth curved, but not kindly. Be careful where you place your attention, Miss Vale. The company monitors loyalty. He left without waiting for a response. Leo signed quickly, his movements small but urgent. He scares me. He scares everyone, Mara replied, keeping her hands low. But fear isn't the same as power. He tilted his head. My father says fear is power. Then maybe he's never been truly afraid. For a moment, the boy studied her as if seeing something no one else had. Then he signed slowly. You talk different than other adults. That's because I listen. Later that night, in her apartment, Mara decrypted the files she'd stolen from Vale Dynamics' internal servers. Lines of code unfolded into transactions, offshore accounts, shell corporations, and encrypted messages signed by one name, Rowan. Buried among them was a personal file marked LVALE confidential. She hesitated before opening it. Inside, a psychological report. Words leaped from the screen, nonverbal by choice after trauma. Father insists on isolation. Recommends continued limited contact. Mara's jaw tightened. They'd turned silence into containment. Control disguised as care. Her phone vibrated, a coded message from her handler. Progress report. Target proximity. She typed back. Closer than planned. But the target isn't the one they think. She shut her laptop. Outside, thunder rolled across the skyline. Somewhere in the glass tower of Vale Dynamics, a boy drew storms that could not yet speak. And Mara realized before she could save him, she would have to teach his world to listen. The following morning, Vale Dynamics shimmered under a curtain of rain. Water streaked down the windows like glass tears, blurring the city skyline into a watercolor of gray and silver. Inside, everything moved in perfect rhythm, elevators humming, assistants gliding through corridors, voices lowered to the pitch of reverence. Mara Vale blended into that rhythm, carrying a folder that looked harmless but contained the kind of information that could end empires. Every footstep echoed with the awareness that she was about to cross paths with the most powerful man in the building, Adrian Vale himself. Her earpiece buzzed softly. Status, her handler asked. Inside the lion's den, she murmured, keep your cover. He's suspicious of everyone. Understood. She cut the line as she approached the top floor. The CEO's office was an architecture of silence, dark wood, pale glass, and one man who could buy and bury nations before breakfast. Adrian Vale stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back, eyes on the rain. He didn't turn when she entered. You've been spending time with my son, he said evenly. Mara froze mid-step. Yes. Only during my compliance reviews, sir. The staff lounge overlaps his. He turned then, and the weight of his gaze silenced her. There was something coldly beautiful about him, like a statue carved from ambition. Leo doesn't talk to anyone, he said. But he talks to you. I know sign language, Mara replied, calm, professional. He seems to need someone who understands him. Vale interrupted, a dry smile tugging at his lips. Do you think I don't? Mara met his eyes. I think you don't try. A silence followed, sharp and dangerous. No one spoke to Adrian Vale like that. He studied her face, perhaps waiting for fear to bloom there. When it didn't, he stepped closer. You're bold, Miss Vale. I admire that, he said finally. But let me offer you advice. My son lives in a world apart for a reason. Some people can't handle too much attention. She didn't flinch. And some people can't handle their own reflection. That made him pause. For the briefest moment, something flickered in his expression, not anger, but memory. Then it was gone. Your report on Zurich is late, he said curtly. Deliver it by 5. He turned away, dismissing her. But as Mara reached the door, she heard him speak again, quietly, to the window rather than to her. I once believed silence was strength, he murmured. Now I'm not so sure. Mara hesitated, then left the room before the moment could turn into something she wasn't supposed to see. That evening, she found Leo in the rooftop garden, huddled beneath a glass canopy that caught the last of the rain. He looked up, surprised. He talked about me, didn't he? Mara blinked. How do you know? He only looks out the window when he's thinking about me. I've seen it. He never says anything, but I can feel it. She sat beside him, their reflections rippling in the wet glass. He doesn't know how to talk to you, she signed. That's not your fault, Leo frowned. He used to before my mom died. After that, he started talking to everyone else instead. Mara's heart tightened. She wanted to tell him the truth, that his father's empire was built on silence, that power often demanded distance. But he was just a boy who wanted to be heard. You could teach him again, she signed softly. He won't learn. He might surprise you. Leo stared out over the rain-soaked skyline, then looked back at her. Why do you care? You're just an analyst. You'll leave. Everyone leaves. Mara hesitated, then signed slowly, because I know what it feels like when no one listens. The wind rose, carrying the scent of rain and asphalt. He watched her for a long time, then reached into his pocket and handed her a folded piece of paper. If you ever have to go, he signed, read this first. She took it but didn't open it. I'll read it when I have to, she said aloud. Down below, in the labyrinth of the security control room, Chief Rowan watched the camera feed of the rooftop through narrowed eyes. 2 figures, 1 woman, 1 boy, their hands moving in silent conversation. He picked up his phone. Sir, he said, your analyst is developing a personal interest in your son. There was a pause, then Adrian Vale's voice, calm, measured, but with something sharp beneath the surface. Keep an eye on her, Rowan. If she steps out of line, remove the distraction. The line went dead. Rowan leaned back, smiling faintly, gladly. The rain had stopped by morning, leaving the city glazed in silver. From the outside, Vale Dynamics gleamed like a monument to progress. But inside, the air carried a new tension, the kind that hums beneath polished surfaces when someone starts asking the wrong questions. Mara Vale moved through the corridors as if nothing had changed, clipboard badge calm. But every reflection in the glass felt like an eye. She knew Rowan had started watching her. Every digital file she opened lagged for a second too long. Every elevator ride came with a silent companion standing 1 floor too close. In her earpiece, her handler's voice crackled. Your cover's compromised. Get what you can, and prepare for extraction. I can't leave yet, she whispered, keeping her lips still. I'm close to something. Your mission was corporate fraud, not family therapy. Agent Vale, I know what my mission was, she said, glancing toward the floor directory where Leo Vale, Private Education Wing, was etched in silver. But I think the real corruption starts there. Mara. She disconnected before the warning finished. That afternoon, she arrived at the Private Education Wing with 2 cups of cocoa, a peace offering disguised as habit. Leo sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by books and drawings. The boy looked up and smiled when he saw her, that quick flash of warmth that made everything else in this building seem colder. You came back, of course. You didn't think I'd break my promise, did you? He shook his head, grinning. Then his hand slowed. There are more cameras now. They moved 1 closer. Mara glanced toward the ceiling, and there it was. A new dome camera, blinking red. She kept her movements casual, but her pulse spiked. Then we'll give them something to watch, she signed with a smile. She pulled a folded page from her pocket, his note. You told me to read this when I had to. Leo nodded nervously. Is now a good time? He hesitated, then nodded again. She opened it. The handwriting was clumsy, but deliberate. If they ever take you away, I'll remember the words you taught me. You said, listening is power. I'll make them listen. She folded the note carefully, emotion catching in her throat. You're stronger than you think, she signed. I learned from you, he replied. Hours later, her instincts screamed. An empty elevator waiting. A badge error that shouldn't have happened. A corridor suddenly cleared of people. She entered anyway. Rowan was waiting in her office. No pretense this time. The door shut behind her with a magnetic click. Ms. Vale, he said smoothly, leaning against her desk. You've been a fascinating case study. Meaning you're not who you say you are. We ran your background again. To clean. Almost as if it were written by someone who knows how to disappear. She said nothing. He stepped closer, voice dropping to a predator's whisper. You think you're saving him, the boy. You think his father doesn't know what you're doing. Mara held his gaze. Does he? Rowan smiled. He knows everything that matters, and what doesn't matter gets erased. He opened a file on her tablet. Security footage. The rooftop, last night. Her and Leo, hands moving in conversation. From a distance, it looked like code, like conspiracy. Rowan slid the tablet toward her. He doesn't need another scandal. He'll do what's necessary. And when he does, I'll make sure your name disappears with the mess. Mara took a slow breath. You won't touch him, won't I? He leaned closer. You care too much. That's your weakness. You'll break first. She smiled, calm, steady, dangerous. Then you don't know me at all. That night, she met Leo in the library. The city glowed beneath them, neon against glass. She crouched beside him, her hands trembling slightly as she signed. Things are changing. You have to be careful, Rowan, he asked. Yes, he's not your father's friend. He's using him. Leo's brow furrowed. Dad doesn't see it. He only sees results. Then we'll show him the truth. But we have to move quietly. He nodded. His hands formed one final sign before she left, one that caught her off guard. Family. She hesitated, then returned the gesture. And in that silent exchange, in the flicker of trust between two people both pretending to belong, Mara realized something far more dangerous than her mission. She wasn't here to expose Adrian Vale. She was here to save his son. And that meant defying everyone, even her own agency. The next morning arrived, sharp and colorless, the kind of winter light that turned glass towers into blades. Inside Vale Dynamics, tension ran like an undercurrent, subtle, constant, ready to crack the surface at any moment. Mara Vale sat in her office pretending to read analytics reports, but her attention was on the reflection in her monitor. Through it, she could see the faint shimmer of a lens, a hidden camera newly installed overnight. She was officially under surveillance now. She minimized the spreadsheet and opened a blank file that looked like code but was really her escape plan, a digital breadcrumb, leading to a secure offsite server. If she uploaded everything she'd discovered, it would expose Adrian Vale's financial empire and Rowan's black operations, but it would also expose her. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard. She couldn't risk it yet. Not until Leo was safe. That afternoon, she went to the education wing earlier than usual. Leo was there, sitting cross-legged by the window, sketching again. When he noticed her, his whole face lit up. You're early, he signed. I missed your drawings, she replied. He grinned and held one up, a rough pencil sketch of a tall woman standing beside a small boy beneath a tower made of light. At the bottom he'd written, People who see each other. Mara's throat tightened. She crouched beside him. Leo, we might have to leave soon. Together he blinked, confused. Leave, where? Somewhere safer. Somewhere they can't hurt you. The boy shook his head hard. Dad won't let me. He says people only want things from him. If we run, he'll think you're using me too. Mara hesitated. He wasn't wrong. Adrian Vale's paranoia was legend. But this wasn't about optics anymore. Rowan had escalated. Then we'll make him understand, she signed. How? He doesn't listen. Mara looked out over the city skyline. Then we'll teach him how. That evening, she intercepted Rowan in the executive corridor. The lights were dim, the office quiet except for the hum of servers. Still here, Ms. Vale, he asked, voice smooth and venomous. I was beginning to think you'd disappeared. She held out a data drive. Funny. I was thinking the same about your offshore accounts. He froze, just for a second. What do you want? For you to stay away from the boy. He chuckled. You think this is about the boy. He's a weakness. The CEO knows it. I'm protecting the company. You're protecting yourself, Mara said evenly. And you're running out of places to hide. Rowan's eyes narrowed. You're bluffing. She smiled. Try me. He took a step closer. You're out of your depth. Aged. She didn't react to the title. He'd said it like a threat, not a revelation. Maybe, she said softly. But drowning isn't as frightening when you've already been under. She walked away before he could respond, her pulse drumming in her ears. Later that night, Leo waited for her in the rooftop garden. The city below glowed like a circuit board, endless and indifferent. He signed quickly, anxious. Rowan came to my father's office. They argued. He said your name. Mara felt the air leave her lungs. Did your father believe him? Leo's hands faltered. He looked angry, but not sure. He told Rowan to find proof. That was enough. Proof was a death sentence in this building. Leo, listen carefully, she signed. If anything happens, go to the east stairwell, sublevel 3. There's an old delivery exit that leads to the streets. Wait for me there. His eyes widened. You're scaring me. Good. Fear means you're paying attention. Do exactly what I said. Promise me. He nodded, reluctant but obedient. Then his hands moved one more time. Will you come back? Mara hesitated, then signed with quiet certainty. I'll come back, even if it kills me. Below them, in the shadows of the parking structure, Rowan made a call. She's planning something, he said. You were right. Adrian Vale's voice was iced through static. Handle it quietly, Rowan smiled. With pleasure, as the line disconnected, thunder rolled somewhere far beyond the glass skyline. Inside, the storm had already begun. The storm broke before dawn. Lightning cracked over the skyline, white veins across the city's metallic heart. In the penthouse level of Vale Dynamics, alarms blinked silently, not from weather, but from intrusion. Somewhere deep in the network, someone had triggered a transfer lock. Rowan knew exactly who. Mara Vale sat in the dark of her office, illuminated by the blue glow of a dozen screens. The files she'd copied were encrypted under multiple aliases, each one leading to a different offshore account tied to Vale Dynamics' shell subsidiaries. But one folder was new, uploaded from an internal drive she hadn't accessed before. Project Silence. She opened it, pulse quickening. Inside were video logs, security footage, a child sitting in a glass room under bright lights. Leo. She watched as men in suits asked him questions he couldn't answer, his hands moving faster and faster until he pressed them against his mouth and stopped altogether. The timestamp read 2 years ago. The date matched the week his mother had died. Mara shut the screen. Her stomach twisted. This wasn't a company protecting a child. It was an empire built on breaking him. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. She knew that rhythm. Boots, not dress shoes. Rowan. The door opened without a knock. He stepped in, gun holstered but visible, rain dripping from his coat. Working late. Ms. Vale. Couldn't sleep. Conscience will do that. He leaned on her desk, eyes scanning the monitors. You shouldn't have gone looking for ghosts. I wasn't, she said softly. I was looking for the truth. He smirked. Same thing. Both get you killed. Rowan reached toward her laptop. She closed it before his fingers touched it. That's classified, she said. Everything here is, he replied. You think you're a hero, but you're just another outsider playing savior. Mara rose slowly, meeting his gaze. And you're just another man hiding behind someone else's power. His eyes went cold. You should have stayed invisible. The gunshot shattered the silence like glass. Mara dove sideways, the bullet carving through the monitor instead of her chest. Sparks burst across the room as she rolled behind the desk, drawing her sidearm from beneath the chair. You're fast, Rowan said, circling, but not fast enough. Another shot. She ducked, heart pounding, the sound muffled by thunder outside. I warned you, he called. This place doesn't forgive betrayal. Mara's eyes darted to the corner's security camera, recording everything. Perfect. She rose, fired once. The bullet hit the ceiling panel, bursting a sprinkler line. Water poured down, drenching wires, shorting lights. Rowan cursed. In the flickering half-dark, she moved like a shadow, 2 steps behind him. One breath, one strike. She hit his wrist. The gun clattered away. He slammed her into the wall, hand gripping her throat. You think Adrian Vale will protect you, he hissed. Mara's voice rasped through his fingers. I'm not the one who needs protection. She slammed the hard drive against his temple. He staggered, dazed, long enough for her to kick the weapon away and run. She sprinted through the deserted corridor, soaked, blood pounding in her ears. Security alarms began to wail. Not digital, but human. Guards shouting her name. Her earpiece crackled to life. Agent Vale, what's happening? They found me. I have evidence Project Silence. It's about the boy. Abort mission. Mara, get out now. Negative, she whispered, ducking into a service stairwell. They'll kill him next. Mara, she ripped the earpiece out. She was done taking orders from people who saw children as collateral. Down in the sublevels, the power flickered as she reached the east stairwell. The old steel door groaned when she pushed it open. Beyond it, a narrow corridor led toward the delivery exit, the one she'd told Leo about. He was there, waiting, small, trembling, but alive. Mara, he whispered, his first spoken word she'd ever heard. The sound was broken, fragile, but real. She froze. You spoke. He nodded. Tears glimmered in his eyes. You came back. She crouched, signing quickly. Always. But we have to go. Now. Thunder boomed above them, drowning the footsteps that echoed closer. Rowan wasn't dead. And he wasn't alone this time. Mara grabbed Leo's hand. Together they ran into the dark, every heartbeat a countdown. Behind them, the alarms screamed through the glass tower. And for the first time in years, someone in Veil Dynamics was listening. Rain pounded against the glass walls of Veil Dynamics as the building descended into chaos. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one inside, alarms blaring, sprinklers bursting, guards shouting into radios that no longer worked. Mara, Veil and Leo ran through the sublevel tunnel, water dripping from the cracked pipes above. The exit was close, a rusted steel door glowing faintly from the red emergency light, but every echo of boots behind them reminded Mara that Rowan was closing in. Leo's hand trembled in hers, his breathing came in sharp bursts, fear and adrenaline tangled together. Almost there, she signed, glancing over her shoulder. He nodded, eyes wide. She pressed her ID card against the old reader. The light blinked red, then green. The lock clicked and then the world exploded. A bullet hit the steel door beside her, spraying metal shrapnel. Mara spun, dragging Leo behind a pillar. Rowan's voice echoed through the corridor. "Game's over, Agent Veil." His silhouette appeared through the haze of emergency lights, soaked, furious, and limping slightly from where she'd struck him earlier. "You could have left," he called. "You could have walked away with your agency bonus and your spotless record. But you had to play hero." Mara steadied her gun, voice low. "You call this heroism, torturing a child." "He's not a child," Rowan spat. "He's a liability, the CEO's weakness. I'm the one who keeps this company alive while Veil drowns in sentiment. He's human." She signed deliberately, knowing Rowan didn't understand the language, but Leo did. "And that's what makes him stronger than you." Leo's small hands moved quickly in response. "We can stop him together." Mara's eyes flicked to a vent panel above the sprinkler main. If she could rupture it, the burst pressure might. Rowan stepped forward. "Don't do it, Mara." His voice softened. "You can't protect him. You'll die for nothing." She smiled faintly. "Then, at least it'll mean something." Her finger squeezed the trigger. The bullet hit the valve. The corridor filled with a roar of water and steam. The pressure wave slammed Rowan backward, his gun spinning across the floor. Mara grabbed Leo's hand. "Run." They sprinted through the mist, pushing through the final door, and out into the night. Cold rain hit their faces as they stumbled into the loading yard. Sirens blared in the distance. Police, fire, maybe both. Behind them, the building's glass facade reflected flashes of blue and red. Leo clung to her coat, shaking. "He's still inside." Mara turned. Through the fractured doorway, she saw Rowan's silhouette rising. His voice carried through the storm. "You think this changes anything? Veil will bury you both." But before he could reach them, another voice boomed from behind. "Stand down, Rowan. Adrian Veil." The CEO stood in the rain, flanked by security. No arrogance this time, only shock and betrayal carved into his face. His gaze fell on Leo first, then on Mara, then finally on the weapon in Rowan's hand. "Sir." "She's Rowan," began. "Enough," Veil said, voice like thunder. "I've seen the footage." Rowan froze. "The cameras," Veil continued. "They caught everything. The project, the threats, your attempt to kill my son." Rowan's mask cracked. "You let this happen." "No," Veil said. "I listened for the first time." The shot came sudden and desperate, but Veil's guards were faster. Rowan dropped before the echo faded. Chapter 9. The Father's Choice. Hours later, the storm had passed. Emergency crews swarmed the grounds, lights flashing across wet asphalt. Mara sat on the back of an ambulance, coat soaked, hand bandaged. Leo leaned against her side, half asleep but safe. Across the lot, Adrian Veil spoke with the police chief, his posture that of a man who'd just watched the foundations of his empire burn. When he finally approached, his expensive shoes splashed through puddles like a man who no longer cared about appearances. "He told me you were a threat," he said quietly. I almost believed him. Mara met his eyes. "Maybe I was. To the wrong people." He nodded. "You uncovered Project Silence." I saw the files. His voice trembled for the first time. "I didn't know it went that far. I thought isolation would protect him, that silence would keep the world from breaking him." "Silence doesn't protect," she said softly. "It just hides the damage." Veil looked down at his son. Leo's fingers twitched in half-formed signs, even in sleep. Adrian tried to mimic one, awkward and slow. "Safe." Mara smiled faintly. "Close. You'll learn." He exhaled, something like relief softening his features. I want to make this right, all of it. Then start by listening, she said. To him, to what he's been saying all along. Vale nodded, eyes bright with something dangerously close to regret. Will you stay? Mara shook her head. You don't need a protector anymore. You need a father. She stood, turning toward the dark skyline where dawn was beginning to bleed through the clouds. Chapter 10. The Language of Light. Weeks later. The world knew everything. The scandal had broken. Headlines read Vale Dynamics whistleblower exposes secret program. But for the first time, Adrian Vale faced the cameras himself, not to deny, not to deflect, but to admit. And beside him, on the grand stage of the company's rebuilt auditorium, stood Leo. When reporters began shouting questions, the boy raised his hands. Cameras clicked, flashes burst. His fingers moved fluidly, clearly. My name is Leo Vale. I was silent because no one wanted to listen. My father learned, so can you. The interpreter voiced the words, but no translation could match the emotion in his movement. Adrian Vale signed back, slow, imperfect, but real, proud. The crowd fell silent. Then applause erupted, not polite, but thunderous, like a storm breaking and finally turning into rain. Back in the shadows of the hall, Mara watched unseen, her coat collar turned up, a faint smile ghosting across her face. Her handler's voice crackled in her new earpiece. Congratulations, Agent Vale. You brought down an empire. She looked at the stage, at the boy who had taught his father to speak again. Not with words, but with truth. No, she whispered. He built something better. She switched the device off, stepped into the morning light, and disappeared into the crowd. Epilogue. 1 year later, in a quiet park far from the city, a boy and his father sat on a bench feeding pigeons. The man wore no suit now. His hands moved with ease, telling a story about a stubborn bird who refused to leave its nest. Leo laughed silently, joyfully, and signed back. That's you. Adrian smiled. Maybe. From a distance, a woman watched them. She didn't approach. She just smiled, touched the old folded note still tucked in her pocket, and whispered to the wind, "Listening is power." Then she walked away, the sunlight breaking through the clouds, the storm finally over.